The defects budget at Opal Towers. Let's have a look. Hello everyone, I'm Florian Heise and welcome to another episode of Heise Says. I've got my stein of coffee in my hand and I thought today we would look at this article about the Opal Towers defect budget. Now, as we see here, Icon put aside $1 million, which is not very much because I think of these things as a contingency, but for defects, might be. You'd hope. You'd hope there wouldn't be that many defects on the building after the dilapidation period, but I guess. And they've spent $24 million so far. $24 million so far. It's growing. Could get worse. So, construction giant Icon claims it has spent $24 million since the evacuation of its cracked Opal Tower skyscraper, despite putting only $1 million aside as a provision for defects. So the key points: 15 owners are still locked out of their apartments as repairs continue. The $24 million repair bill is expected to keep growing, and one expert says the amount put aside by Icon was indicative of an under-regulated industry. That's a good point. You always need to put money aside when you have a construction budget, depending on what you're doing, from 3% to 10%, depending on how complex the project is, what the unknowns are. If you're maybe doing a renovation on a heritage piece of work, you don't know what you can discover. That's for latent conditions during the construction. And you'd want the builder to also budget for the defects as well. So $1 million does not seem very, unless they're super confident they've done it so well, doesn't seem like much. What's concerning is, and we'll look at another article where Subbies were saying that this was built on the cheap, bargain basement pricing. Financial statements accessed by the ABC reveal Icon, the company that built the tower, was holding just $1.09 million in the fund for its portfolio of buildings across New South Wales. However, it has forked out $24 million and counting since the Opal Tower disaster, which happened just months after the building opened its doors. Many builders have funds to cover defects. However, one expert said the very modest amount Icon had put aside was indicative of the under-regulated industry and an example of why reform was needed. All 392 apartments in Opal Tower at Sydney's Olympic Park were evacuated on Christmas Eve when cracks were spotted in the building, with residents forced out of their homes and into temporary accommodation. More than 8 months on, 15 owners are still locked out of their apartments as rectification work continues. Some owners have launched a class action lawsuit against the state government. Yes, that's because of the unique situation where the state government was an owner of the land, and so it's not something you could see happening on every single development. I think that's an oddity just of this particular site. Icon told the ABC the Opal Tower event was insurable. However, it did not reveal how much of the $24 million, which also includes an amount spent on housing residents in temporary accommodation, it was planning to claim. It said the bill to repair Opal Tower would not come out to the $1 million defects fund listed in its financial results. Icon is broken into state-based companies, with the New South Wales arm reporting $163.4 million in revenue for 2018, well down from the $335.3 million it reported in 2017. It banked a $1.63 million net profit in 2018, down from $6.8 million in 2017. Across the company, Icon estimates a $1.7 billion project pipeline this year. An Icon spokesman said the company's approach to Opal Tower since the Christmas Eve evacuation cannot be questioned. Well, they did provide accommodation for the people there. They did step in, so it's not as dodgy. The fact that we've got the issues on the project is a concern, but the fact that they responded in what I could say is a reasonable response compared to some of the other projects we've seen around the country, yeah. This is all without admission of liability, the company spokesman said. That's an important issue. I was talking to someone yesterday. The problem is, sometimes as a professional, you have to be a bastard. You are put in the unfortunate position of being a bastard. You can't just say, okay, there was an issue there, we'll resolve it. You can't admit liability. For doing that, you void your insurance. So, and I can understand why they have to clarify that. The Opal Tower situation triggered a domino effect across the New South Wales industry, with a parliamentary inquiry into the regulation of building standards wrapping up yesterday. Mandatory home warranty insurance is needed. Yes, this is concerning. This is really concerning that some of the protections that you have on standard homes does not apply or doesn't exist for apartments in these towers. Strata law expert Dave Bannerman's firm, Bannerman Lawyers, has represented clients in more than 300 cases. He said the New South Wales industry's issues came down to the lack of mandatory home warranty insurance. Home warranty insurance is taken out by a builder on behalf of the owners and covers the cost of repair of defective or unfinished works when the builder has disappeared, died, or become insolvent. But if a building is more than 4 stories high, it is not required. It's stupidity, absolute stupidity, Mr. Bannerman said. I'm guessing, I haven't looked into it, but I'm guessing it's because of the cost. I wonder what the cost would be on nowadays with everything that's coming out. I wonder what the cost would be. Maybe if the insurance companies got in and started being quite particular with the requirements in some of these developments, they might force them to do a better job, or they won't insure it. You know? If the insurance was in place, it wouldn't be the debacle it is today. Yeah, he's got a good point. At least it could be something that people could draw upon. They wouldn't need to, pursue via the legal methods. But Mr. Bannerman said the modest amount ICOM set aside for defects was a reflection of the way the industry worked. Buildings are not going to be faultless. They don't come off a manufactured plant, and there's always going to be something wrong to come and fix up, Mr. Bannerman said. Well, that's why you have a defects liability period. You've got a 1-year period after practical completion where you, as the project manager or the architect, withhold a portion of funds from the builder. Okay? Every time you pay the builder, you withhold a portion, a couple percent, depending on what you've decided. And that all adds up, and at the end of the practical completion, when the building is practically complete and you've got the 1-year period, the defects liability period, you give them half of that money back. And then at the end of the defects liability period, you give them the other half of the money. The reason you hold on that money is so if the builder doesn't rectify the issues in a timely manner, you can get someone else to come in and rectify the issues in that defects liability period. Often they'll just give you 2 bank guarantees, one that you hand over after the other, because it's easier than screwing around with withholding money and all of these type of things. So, you'd hope that that would be enough to protect the owners of these buildings, but you'd also need the insurance. I can see how it could be valuable as well. But usually what happens is builders just lean back on the subcontractors and say, I need you to fix this for me, or I'm not going to give you the next job. Yeah, well, how about the subbies in the comments? Share some of your experiences with this. If you've worked on some of these jobs, if you've worked with some of these big boys, what's it like when they need you to, rectify the defects? Well, often it could also be a subby defect. So it's not as bad as it looks. What if the subbies made the defect and they're responsible for it too and they need to rectify it? That's the thing. A big part of that provision for defects fund would be for what the subcontractors can't complete. So what do you think, guys? Do you think it's surprising that this insurance doesn't exist for these type of buildings? What if the developer went bust? What about years later? Maybe they need to ensure that there's an insurance in place for a decade. Some money put aside for a decade as a guarantee. That would make sense. It probably would address a lot of the issues we're having in these industries all around Australia, in this industry all around Australia at the moment. Let me know what you think in the comments, guys. Do you think we should push for that? Do you think this is the solution? And if you're a subbie, have you copped it unfairly sometimes? Because often they'll come in at a certain price to win the job, and then they'll squeeze you there, and then they'll squeeze you at the end as well. Particularly if they're badly organized. Then it gets even worse. And we'll just look at one more thing. One article that's a bit out of date, but Opal Tower built on bargain basement prices, says subcontractors. As design and construction flaws are beginning to emerge, subcontractors who worked on the crumbling Opal Tower have revealed worrying details. As a number of design and construction issues have been confirmed in Sydney's cracked Opal Tower by an independent investigation, subcontractors who worked on the building have revealed some worrying details. And we'll go down here. So this was the Australian Subcontractor Association spokeswoman, Louise Stewart, told the Sydney Saturday Telegraph workers were employed at bargain basement prices and claimed they were not paid on time. Well, sadly, that's a common thing in the construction industry. All you accountants and lawyers out there, you've got no idea, or you probably do, if you've got clients who work in the game. She said 8 businesses claimed they were expected to build the tower for unreasonable pay, and when payment was due, it was not forthcoming. However, a spokeswoman for the tower's builder Icon said the firm categorically rejected any claims of late payments to subcontractors. See, it can all get messy. There can be subcontractors of subcontractors that can cause issues. Icon is one of the best payers in the business, she told the Telegraph, adding that none of the variations were unusual. It comes as the independent investigations found numerous building faults. We've read that. So you can see here, they're just going through the issue. So there's claims that they're not being, the subbies are being paid on the cheap. And we can see. I wouldn't be surprised. I mean, there is always a bit of pressure in these developers put on the subbies. And it depends how hungry people are and how unrealistic the expectation of the developer is. Anyway, guys, thanks for watching. Like, share, and subscribe. And I'll see you later. Take care.